This is Algebra Lesson 2-9, percents. A percent is a ratio of a number to 100. For example, 93% simply means 93 out of 100. Now, there are three ways to write a percent. You can write it as a percent, you can write it as a decimal, and you can write it as a fraction. So 93% can be written as a percent, it can be written as 93 over 100, it can also be written as 0.93. So it can be written as a percent, a fraction, and a decimal. And it's very, very helpful if you can understand and know how to convert from one form to another fairly simply. So to change a percent to a decimal, very simple. Move the decimal point 2 places to the left and omit the percent sign. You're basically dividing by 100. That's why you move the decimal point 2 places to the left. So 41%, normally the decimal point is after the last digit if it's not expressed. Move that decimal 2 places to the left, so this would be 0.41. Do you need the leading zero? No, but I have a tendency to put it there just because it looks a little neater and it's more scientific that way. 2%, if I move my decimal point 2 places to the left, that becomes 0.02. 150%, decimal 2 places left, 1, 2, that becomes 1.5. No leading zero needed here because I have a digit after the before the decimal point that is not a zero. 0.5%, move that decimal 2 places to the left, which means I'm going to have 0.005. Just simply dividing by 100, which is moving your decimal point 2 places to the left. Now, to change a fraction to a percent, you set the fraction equal to a proportion of n over 100. So, for example, 3 over 5 is going to equal n over 100, and then you solve the proportion. So if I cross multiply, 5n equals 3 times 100. So 5n equals 300. Divide by 5. 5 goes into 36 times, so it goes into 360 times. So n is equal to 60. So as a percent, this is 60%. Don't forget to solve the proportion and then add your percent sign. 6/5. Well, I know this is going to be over 100 because 6/5 is an improper fraction. So I know I should be over 100% when I'm done with this. So set it up to equal to n over 100. So 5n is going to equal 600 this time. Divide by 5, divide by 5. So n is going to equal 120. So this is 120%. Which makes sense because I said it should be over 100, which it is. Now, some of you are going to know some of these proportions, or these percents, without having to set them up into a proportion. Some of them will not be quite so easy, like number 3. Most people don't know what percent this is. I knew what 1 and 2 were without having to set them up into a proportion. I kind of remember what 3 is, but I don't use it often enough, so I would probably have to set it up into a proportion to solve it. So 9 over 11 equals n over 100. So 11n is going to equal 900. Divide by 11. And this is not going to be a terminating decimal, so I'm going to leave it as a fraction. I'm not going to leave it as 900 over 11. I'm actually going to divide it out. So if I think about it, okay, I know that 11 goes into 900. I'm going to show it this way just because it makes it easier for you to understand what I'm doing. 11 goes into 90 8 times because 8 times 11 is 88. That gives me 2. 11 goes into 20 1 time. That's 11. That gives me a remainder of 9, which means here n is going to equal 81. And now my remainder becomes my top of my fraction. My divisor becomes the bottom of the fraction. So 81 and 9/11%, which is perfectly accurate versus rounding to a nearest decimal place. If they tell you you can round to a nearest decimal place, then you can do it. Otherwise, you're going to have to give it to me as an exact answer. So it should be 81 and 9/11%. And last but not least, to change a decimal to a percent. Well, to change a percent to a decimal, you move the decimal point 2 places to the left. To change a decimal to a percent, you're going to do the opposite. So you're going to move the decimal point 2 places to the right, and now you're going to add a percent sign. So 0.76 becomes, move it 2 places to the right, 76%. 3.5, 2 places right, 350%. 0.007, 2 places to the right, 0.7%. Now, you can solve problems involving percents using either a proportion or an equation, which are very closely related. If you write a percent as a fraction, you can use a proportion to solve the percent problem. Now, here's something that's really, really important. Some of you are going to understand the equation part better, and some of you are going to understand the proportion part better. Do what works for you. Okay, I'm just going to tell you that the proportion works really well if you can't remember what you're supposed to do with your percent. If you can't remember, oh, do I need to change this to a decimal first? Do I need to change my percent to a decimal? Do I need to change my decimal to a percent? I can't remember. So you can think of the percent proportion as a simpler way to solve things. Okay, now you can represent A is P% of B by using the percent proportion. In the proportion, B is the base or the whole, and A is the part of the base. Okay, so A over B equals P over 100, where B cannot equal 0. So what percent of 50 is 25? Well, 25 is the part, so it goes on the top. 50 is the whole, it goes on the bottom, equals P over 100. Sometimes it's a whole lot easier to remember. Part over whole equals X over 100. And the easiest way to remember that is normally, not always, but normally, the number that follows is the part, and the number that follows of is the whole. So you can think of it as is over of equals percent over 100. So depending on what you're looking for, your proportion of your equation will be slightly different when you're solving your problem. So let's solve a couple, or let's look at a couple. If I look at solving a, wait a second, I messed up something here. Oh, no, that's good. I'm going to look something up. I'm going to have to stop this. Okay, continuing on, solving percent problems. You can solve it, like I said, with a proportion or an equation. So look at the problem type. If it says to find a percent, like what percent of 6.3 is 3.5? The proportion, 3.5 is the part, so it goes on the top. 6.3 is the whole, so it goes on the bottom. P is the percent that we're looking for over 100. To solve that as an equation, you literally can just write it word for word. 3.5 equals P% of 6.3, because it says what percent, okay, of means multiply in math most of the time. So what percent, P% of 6.3 is equal to 3.5. If you're finding a part, what is 32% of 125? Part is on the top, okay. What is, that means this is what, that means that's why the A is on the top here, of 125%, 32 over 100. Or we could say what is A equals 32% of 125. Finding the base or the whole. For example, 25% of what number is 11? As a proportion, 11 is the part, it's the is, it's what follows is, okay, over the of, we don't know of what number, that becomes our base, that's B, 25%. A percent is always on the top, over 100. Whatever your percentage is, it always goes over 100. In the equation, we would say that 11 is 25% of what number, we're going to say B. Now, the thing you have to remember with the equation is you have to change all your percentages to decimals. And then once you get your answer, you have to find out if they want you to write the answer as a decimal or as a percent or as a whole number. Okay, so that's something to remember when you do the equation. So we're going to solve some problems I'm going to show both the equation and the proportion. It's your choice whether you like the equation better or the proportion better. I'm going to do them in several ways just because I want you to get familiar with them and figure out which way works best for you. So in this first problem, we have 15.5% of 60 is what number? So if we do the percent, we have is over of. So is what number? That becomes my variable. So I'm going to say A over 60 equals 15.5, because that's my percent over 100. So that would be my proportion if I was going to solve my proportion. So to cross multiply, A times 100 is 100A. It's going to equal 60 times 15.5. 60 times 15.5 is 930, so we have 100A equals 930. Divide by 100. Well, we know dividing by 100 is moving that decimal point 2 places to the left. So A is going to equal 9.3. And it's asking for a number, so that's the answer that needs to be written as. Whenever you use the proportion, all you have to worry about is, do I need to put a percent sign on? Do I not need to put a percent sign on? But if you solve using an equation, the same problem with an equation, okay? 15.5%, okay? I'm going to have to change that to a decimal. So 0.155 of means multiply 60 is means equals what number is a variable. So there we go. So we have 0.155 times 60. Right? If I multiply all that out, 0.155 times 60 is 9.3. So x is equal to 9.3. You get the same answer. Some people like the equation better. Some people like the proportion better. Figure out what works best for you and see how you can set them up and be consistent. Number 2 says, what is 20% of 90? Okay. What is 20% of 90? So I'm thinking of 90, that means 90 is on the bottom here. What is my equation? So I'll make that A. 20% is 20 over 100. So there's my proportion. Okay. What becomes my part over my whole, which is 90, percent over 100. So part over whole equals percent over 100. So if I'm going to multiply these, cross multiply, I'm going to have 100A is going to equal 90 times 20. So 100A, 9 times 2 is 18, add 2 zeros is going to equal 1800. Divide by 100 means drop 2 of the zeros off, so A is going to equal 18. The same problem set up as an equation. Okay, so what is 20% of 90? So what? That becomes a variable. Is an equal sign. 20%, 0.20. This is where you have to remember to change all percentages to decimals. Of means multiply, and 90 goes there. So 0.2 times 90, right, is 18. So it really doesn't matter whether you choose to use proportion or an equation. Just be familiar with both of them and see which one works for you. Let's work on a couple more. What percent of 60 is 12? Okay, what percent of 60 is 12? So I'm going to do an equation first on this one. What percent? It's going to be x of 60 of means multiply of 60 is means equals, and 12 is 12. Right, so I have 60x equals 12. Divide both sides by 60. So x is going to equal 0.2. Now is what I remember. I'm looking for a percent. 0.2 is not a percent. I need to change it to a percent. So that means it's going to equal 20%. That's the advantage of the proportion method over the equation method, is you don't have to change things from decimals to percents, percents back to decimals. You just have to solve the equation and then make sure you put a percent sign in if you need it. So if we were going to solve this using the percent equation, okay, what percent of 60 is 12? Well, 12 is the part, because whatever follows is over of equals, we're looking for the percent, over 100. So there's your equation for that. So you're going to get 60x equals 1200. Divide by 60. And you're going to get x is equal to 20. Notice the difference here. I did not have to move a decimal point. All I have to do is put my percent sign on. So either way works. Figure out which way you like best. Whichever way you're more consistently getting the answer correct is the way I would probably go. All right, what percent of 90 is 63? Okay, what percent of 90 is 63? All right, so if I did what percent, so P percent of 90 is 63. Okay, so basically 90p equals 63 divided by 90. P will equal 63 divided by 90 is 0.7. So P percent would equal 70%. As the proportion, what percent of 90 is 63 is over of equals percent over 100. So I'm going to have 90n is going to equal 6,300 divided by 90 divided by 90, x for n, not x. I changed my variable, so I need to make sure I'm consistent here. N is equal to 70, and since it's asking for a percent, all I need to do is add the percent sign. Okay, what happens if they put it into a word problem? Little word phrases are easy. Word problems are a little harder. A sweater normally costs $49.99. It is on sale for 25% off. What is the sale price? Okay, so there's several ways you can look at this. I like to look at this as if it's on sale for 25% off, that means I'm paying 75%. Okay, I'm not paying 100% of the price, I'm only paying 75% of the price. So I need to know what is 75% of $49.99. If you can take a word problem and write it into a small, quick phrase, you can probably set up the equation and or proportion. I'm going to use an equation for this just because I tend to like the equations better. So what is x equals 75%, 0.75 of $49.99. That means multiply. So I'm going to take 0.75 times $49.99, and that will give me $37.49. And that seems logical. Because think of $50. Okay, think of $49.99 as $50. 25% off would mean I'm going to pay 1/4 of $50. Well, 1/4, I'm going to get 1/4 off. I'm going to pay 3/4 of $50. Half of $50 would be 25. Half of 25 is 12.5. Take 12.5, add it to 55. Excuse me, add it to 25. 25 plus 12.5 is going to give you 37.5. So we're really close because we have that 1 cent difference. So $37.49. So the sale price is $37.49. And our answer is reasonable because we already checked that. Okay. A common application of percents is what we call simple interest, which is interest you earn on only the amount of money you have in your account or the principal that's in your account. There is a special formula for simple interest. The simple interest formula is I equals PRT, where I is the interest, P is the principal, R is the annual interest rate when written as a decimal, and T is the time in years. So for example, if you invest $75 at a simple interest rate of 3.5% per year for 5 years, the interest you will earn is 75 times 0.035 times 5, or $13.13. Now, something else that's really important is when you solve problems involving percents, it's helpful to know fraction equivalents for common percentages. So these are some common percentages that you need to know. So I'm going to teach you some of the common percentages that you need to know. Okay, 1%, that's equal to 1/100. 5%, that is equal to 1/20. Okay, 10%, that's equal to 1/10. 20% is 1/5. 25%, everybody should know, I'm hoping, that's 1/4. Think of 25 cents out of a dollar. Another one that's really hard to know is the ones that people tend to forget. 33.3 repeating, that's 1/3. Okay, and the actual accurate answer is 1/3, not 33.3 with a bar over the 3. 50% is 1/2. 66.6 repeating percent, oops, I forgot the percentage here, is going to equal 2/3 if 33 and 1/3 is 33.3 repeating is 1/3, so 66.6 repeating is 2/3. These two you need to know. I'm not going to expect you to know them. I'm going to refer to them often. I'm going to expect you to know those. 75% is equal to 3/4, and last but not least, 100% is equal to 1. Those are some really important fractions to percent conversions that you really should know, and you should commit to memory because that will help you out a lot in the long run. All right, let's do a simple interest problem. You deposit $650 in a savings account that earns a simple interest rate of 5% per year. You want to keep the money in the account for 5 years. How much interest will you earn, and how much will you have in your account after 5 years if you do not take any of your money out? All right, so interest equals principal times rate times time. So I'm looking for my interest. My principal was $650. My interest rate was 5%, but as a decimal, that's 0.05. So I'm going to multiply this by 0.05. My time in years was 5. So I'll multiply that by 5. So 650 times 0.05 times 5. So if I take my $650 and I just keep it in the bank, that's earning 5% interest for 5 years, I'm going to earn $162.50. So my interest will be $162.50. Okay, so if I don't take my money out at all, if I take my $650 that I started with, and I add my $162.50, I will end up with $812.50 after 5 years. Okay, so to answer this question, the interest is $162.50, and my total in my account will be $812.50, which is why you should put money in savings or invest it in some way, shape, or form if you don't need to use it right away, because it will earn you interest, and it's kind of nice to just have your money earning interest by doing nothing. All right. Alrighty. Our closure question for this lesson: which method, the proportion of the equation, do you prefer to solve percent problems, and why? So please explain which method you prefer and why you prefer it.